So criticisms more than applause have greeted Nigeria's $800 million World Bank loan that the finance minister Zainab Ahmed says will be distributed to selected about 50 million Nigerians as palliatives to cushion the impending fuel subsidy removal. As we speak, there is no final word yet on how the multi-trillion naira contentious fuel subsidy will be handled in a transition to a new administration on June the 1st, as well as the distribution of the planned palliatives, which may include the provision of transport buses, among other things. Let's discuss the imperatives of Nigeria's fuel subsidy removal and what options lie before the current and the incoming administrations. As we bring in Dr. Franklin Ngwu, the Director in charge of Public Sector Initiative at the Lagos Business School. Great having you in the studio this evening. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
It's a public holiday.
Are
there easy options before Nigeria actually moving subsidy? Let's start from there. Are there easy options?
Let's trace back a little bit. What is even subsidy? Why should we remove subsidy and why should we have subsidy? I'm sure we know that subsidy is because we believe that we have oil, is a way of comparative advantage, is one of the things that we can give Nigerians and all that. But if you follow the history and the development in the oil and gas sector, it's clear that we cannot afford it again because now we are borrowing to subsidize.
Why did we go into subsidy in the first place?
I mean, countries in different parts of the world, given what you have, given your assets, given your resources, you can decide and say, for this sector, I will provide subsidy. Like, for example, in Europe, they provide subsidy for agriculture.
In the US as well.
In the US as well, as the case may be. So
that's production.
That's production. But it's believed that if we have subsidy on fuel, it will make more or less reduce transport, it will reduce cost of production, it will reduce cost of labor, which generally, cumulatively, should aid production.
Looking back, was that a wise decision? Looking back,
if things are done the way they're supposed to be done, in terms of knowing fully well that oil is meant to aid production, aid productive economy, yes, it is a good decision. But the way we've used it, the way we've applied it, the way we've handled it, now looking back, is not a good decision.
Perhaps, do you think that, because why do we subsidize fuel as a first line of energy, source of energy, rather than electricity?
Well, of course, we also subsidize electricity as well in Nigeria. So of course, that's why they say that we're supposed to be paying cost-reflective tariff.
Yes.
But I mean, what we're paying now in many areas is not really cost-reflective. So we've been subsidizing electricity. We've been subsidizing a few other things, including fuel.
Kerosene.
So, kerosene, as the case may be.
Diesel at some point.
Yes. But what I'm trying to say is that as at today, looking 3 years back, 5 years back, 10 years back, should we continue with the subsidy, given particularly the way the oil, the way we bring in petrol, the way we now import it, our refineries are not working, we are now borrowing to subsidize everything. We are even being told that what we are subsidizing, we are not using. That means that we are subsidizing maybe other West African countries. So, in answer to your question, should the subsidy be removed? Yes, it should be removed because it is not sustainable. Because it's more or less a waste now to the economy, to the people,
This issue has been so much politicized that the economics of it had become trampled in the mud.
Yes.
So, I mean, successively over the last several years as to whether it is real, it's not real, who benefits, is it a fraud, is it not a fraud? But subsidy for fuel is real, is it not?
It is real, but it depends on how you apply it now. So it's clear, of course, remember that during I think Jonathan's administration, we had the fuel subsidy review committee that was headed by Ike Imokwede that reviewed so many things. That was clear that what we call subsidy is not all of them that is really subsidy. There's a lot of fraud, a lot of issues going
under the table
going on.
Yes.
So at the moment, and given also the fact that if you look at the different sectors of the economy, that we are not doing well. Given the fact that we now have 130 million Nigerians in terms of multidimensional poverty, given the fact that in terms of production, we are not there, given the fact that we don't even have large industry that is making the economy to be productive, I think that subsidy should be removed.
We all agree that the subsidy should be removed. The multilateral agencies, the World Bank, the IMF, everybody in the room has said, look, we need to throw it out of the window. The question is, how should the full subsidy removal be handled?
Remember that There was a time it was announced that it would be removed last year. Somehow, the government said, no, let's leave it until this year. Remember also that the PMB signed the Petroleum Industry Act,
yes,
which is supposed to have led to this removal of the subsidy. Now is leaving it and saying, oh, what we're hearing now is that it should be removed around June.
the 1st.
The 1st of June. So the question then is, who is removing it? Is it PMB announcing it for Nigerians to start getting prepared? And it will now be left for the incoming government to finally remove it. So the question then is, what are the functions or the responsibility of this new government in terms of preparing Nigerians for the eventual removal of the subsidy?
You think that the current administration is winding down in a manner of speaking?
Yes. I remember also...
And made provisions just half year.
Exactly. I remember also that it was announced last year that the subsidy will be removed. Suddenly they told, as I said, it will be this year. And they now say, okay, we're going to have elections.
So it can be done in the first quarter?
And it can be done in the first quarter. And towards the election, we had terrible fuel crisis. In addition to the fuel crisis, we had the Naira redesign crisis as well. So there's been a lot of, mistrust, inconsistency on the part of the government. And we now said, okay, after the election, lamentably, the election has been perceived or seen as being flawed in terms of the way it has been conducted, which has also raised that uncertainty, which has also raised that mistrust, which has also raised that lack of confidence on the government. Now we are being told that the subsidy will now be removed by 1st of June. But we're also being told that a new government will come in on May 29th. So my understanding is that this present government is more or less announcing it to Nigerians. More or less what they will do is to maybe go into serious advocacy, engaging the public, telling the public what they're planning to do, like what the Minister of Finance is saying in terms of the $800 million palliative that they are suggesting, another thing that they want to do. Maybe. However, also, if, for instance, that the election was conducted in a more credible way, and that majority of Nigerians will say this election was very credible and we have a new government, it will increase the credibility of the government.
But we've gone through the subsidy removal route before. Goodluck Jonathan removed it in the midnight of June the 1st, 2012.
Yes.
So, it's nothing new to Nigerians, so unless anyone's born between then and now. So, why should there be so much discussion about... I think we all agree they should be removed. Perhaps with the exception of the Nigerian Labour Congress. Yeah,
we all agree that it should be removed. I even think that NLC, I'm sure they are clear in their mind that this subsidy
has to go.
Has to go. It's not sustainable. Because if you look at this year's budget, it's believed that we're going to use about 3-point-something trillion, about 3.6 or something like that, to address issue of subsidy. But interestingly, we have 130-something million Nigerians multidimensionally poor. And of course, when you talk about multidimensional poverty, you're talking about health, education, and other areas.
Technically, every Nigerian is poor.
Yes, but just 1 minute.
Technically speaking.
So you find out that the budget for education and health is close to about 3 trillion. So what you're using for subsidy alone is higher than what you're using for education and health. And these are the key engines for a productive economy. So from an economic point of view, subsidy has to go.
I haven't seen that script that tells me this is how we're going to remove it, with the exception that the provisioning for it will be cut down. Is it going to be done on June the 1st? Holistically, the way Jonathan did it, like a flight in the night? Will it be 100% or will it be scalable?
It depends. Of course, I'm not the current Minister of Finance.
No, the incoming one.
You are not sure whether I will be.
I'm not sure whether I will be nominated.
Exactly.
Yes.
So nobody is sure how it's going to be done. But either remove it completely or they do it gradually.
Yes.
But the question is that it has to go. But because the question then is, how do you do it in terms of the impact?
But the uncertainty is what is keeping everyone on edge.
But of course,
today is the 10th of April, And we have less than 60 days.
That's what I'm saying, that the government intentionally or possibly unintentionally creates a lot of uncertainties surrounding everything. About Naira redesign, about election, about subsidy, about doctors trying to travel, about traveling out of Nigeria, about coming to Nigeria. Everything is surrounded by uncertainty, and that's why we say that Nigeria is a very typical example of what we call a VUCA economy. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous.
Okay, so is there a need for palliatives to cushion the removal of the subsidy? Question.
Yes. And yes.
You're not sure?
No, I'm sure.
That's the tough one. Do we need palliatives to remove it?
Yes, we need. So, but what I'm trying to say is that it's not only fuel subsidy that will require palliative in Nigeria. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have an economy where you have 135 million people out of 210 million people classified as multidimensionally poor, you need palliative for them. If you have an economy where you have over 30-something% unemployment, you need palliative. If you have an economy where minimum wage as of 2019 was 30,000, that 30,000 is equivalent to about 18,000 now, you need palliative for them. If you have an economy where you have more or less a flawed election and there is a high level of uncertainty in the economy because of that election, you need palliative.
I wish we have all the time for this conversation, because if you're going to subsidize, it's going to provide palliatives to the 135 million people on fuel, on electricity, on motoring, on education, on healthcare. How many things would you provide palliatives for? But that's a different conversation. What type of palliatives, therefore, should we do for fuel? And why is it the only thing that Nigerians can say, this is what I'm getting palliatives for, because we're removing the subsidy?
So, in essence, what I'm trying to say that Nigeria is a country that requires litany of palliatives. Not just fuel. But what are we asking as Nigerians? What Nigerians are asking is not just about coming and saying, oh, we have $800 million given to us by World Bank. We're going to transfer it to 5 million Nigerians and 5 million households, 10 million households with 5 million people. With 5 per household, which is now 50 million people. However, this is 50 million. But remember, I just said earlier on that we have 135 million multidimensionally poor. So what happens to the remaining 85 million when you give only 50 million? So what that suggests is that is flawed. Transferring money to only 50 million Nigerians in a society that there is no trust, in a society that is high, social embeddedness is endemic, ethnicity and all that, who do you know, your connections are very... So how are we sure how this list was compiled?
I want to agree.
So what I'm trying to say is that what Nigerians are asking for, a more sustainable palliative, is what we require. And what would that be?
Sustainable palliative. In other words, you're not really in bed with the fact that we take $100 million from the World Bank,
$800 million.
$800 million. Share it, denominate it into Naira. Of course, that is extra Naira in the system, by the way, if you talk about inflation. So you just increase money supply in the system. So you just contribute to your inflation, by the way, by sharing more money. And we've been sharing money. So if you give 800 million, you take it down and you put it
back into the economy,
back into the system, and you give it to 50 million people. You don't really think we should share that money, do you?
Remember also that last year we are told by CBN that the reason for Naira redesign, that money in circulation was too much. So one of the reasons for Naira design is to reduce money in circulation, which CBN has been trying to achieve. Now, suddenly, we are bringing $800 million. If you convert it at the official rate, it will give you maybe 400 or 500. If you use the black market rate, you're getting about 600 or 700 billion naira. And you pump it into the market. If you pump it, remember, just go back to a little bit of economics. The output is constant in terms of agricultural outputs, they are constant. So you have, the supply is constant. So you have the same money plus 800 or 700 billion chasing the same money. So what will happen? All that will happen is we just raise food prices, and food inflation will continue to increase.
Because I would have known that you got part of the you are part of the 50 million people, and I will now increase my produce in price because I know you have extra cash.
Exactly. So you have extra cash.
Yeah.
But of course, the time. Remember that it is not just once you have extra cash, firms will just go and start producing immediately. No. It takes there's a lag.
Yes.
So before they start producing to meet up with the extra, inflation has already moved up. And then the CBN will now say, okay, we need to mop up more money in circulation. So we are more or less in cycle. And that's what I'm saying, that Nigeria is a country that needs litany of palliatives. But that's not what we really need. What we need is sustainable, efficient policies that will address some of these fundamental issues that we're talking about. I will
explain that to me.
Yes. So what we are looking at is, for example, so you look at the monetary policy and you look at the fiscal policy. So this first subject that we're trying to remove falls under the fiscal space so that we can have more room and other things. So let me go to the monetary policy first. So you say from 1st of June that we are not going to have all these multiple exchange rates. We're going to have one single exchange rate. From 1st of June, you say that the ways and means from CBN to the federal government should be kept at 5% that is allowed under the law. From 1st of June, you say the borders that we've closed before, the restriction that we've had, we're going to open it up because it's not enabling trade. Those are some of the things that you can do. Then also, you now come and say, okay, we are getting 800 million or 700 billion naira from Central Bank.
From the World Bank.
From the World Bank. How do we make it more sustainable? A typical example. I've said it on this forum before. Let's assume that you say every state in Nigeria, you're going to plant 10 million economic trees, and we're going to give you 10 billion naira to do that. These economic trees will start fruiting in 3 years. I'm talking about subsidized rates, which are, because I know palm seedling will cost about 300 naira. But we are saying use 1,000 for clearing the bush, for everything, so that 10 million will give you 10 billion. So you give it to 36 states. Proper monitoring, proper investment. So they plant that. In 3 years' time, the 10 million economic trees will give each state in Nigeria 300 billion naira as revenue. So times 300 billion times 36. So you understand the revenue you're going to get. So what I'm trying to say is that once you do that, you find out that you've actually created a sustainable revenue, removing poverty, reducing insecurity, reducing a lot of things. That's one example. Another example, you now say, okay, let's look at what Nigeria requires is actually intensive job creation. Intensive. So anything that will create jobs in Nigeria, let's do it. Because as you are creating more jobs, you are allowing more people to come into the tax net. You're allowing more people to now, more people will be having money to give to the dependencies and all that. So another example I will just give and we can move on to other questions.
Yes.
Let's look at Nigerian Postal Service. You can say, Nigerian Postal Service, we want to use this place to create, let's say, 1 million jobs. Actual example. In UK, of course, hear about Royal Mail. In Germany, you hear about Deutsche Post. Go and check their revenue, go and check what they are doing. UK is 60 million people. Nigeria is 200 something million people. So what you can say is that with this money that we have now, we can say, let every state create 1 million postcodes, 1 million from every state. That will give us about 36 or 37 million postcodes plus FCT. Then you now say, okay, what we're going to do is how do we make sure that night post will deliver 5 million parcels, letters every single day? Is it possible? It is possible. All you are trying to do is to redistribute wealth from the people who are more well off to those who are not well off. By doing that, you are bringing more people into employment. You are making sure that they pay tax. You are making sure that their dependencies, their dependents will now be brought in. And you can do that. You can look at the banks, for example. Just a minute. Yes. You can look at the banks, for example. You can say all banks in Nigeria, we have about 40 million customers of total number of banks, BVN accounts. You can now say, okay, every month you must, as a policy of the government, post the bank statement of each person to the person. All you're trying to do, get my point clear, you are trying to create jobs. You are trying to create inclusive society. That will provide 40 million letters or parcels to 9 posts. You now tell every school, once the semester is ended, you must post the results of each child, each student to the parent. It's intentional. You are creating it. So at the end of the day, you find out that the economy will start picking up. There will be flow. Activity, exactly. Another thing you can do is to say, okay, as former NBA president has said, these election issues, let's sort it out before May 29th. So there will be stability in the economy. From my engagement with many private firms, anybody you talk to, you will say, let's hold on until May. Let's know what will happen. So if you're able to sort that out, this uncertainty will reduce, so people can actually have more confidence into the economy. Look at what is going on in our foreign portfolio investment. People are leaving. They are not here because they don't want to bring their money because they don't really know what is going to happen. But if we have this kind of policies that will enable us to create a lot of jobs, more people will come into the economy, and the economy will start producing. So what I'm saying is that we don't really need a palliative where you just transfer 800 billion to Nigerians.
From all indications,
yes.
This administration, the outgoing administration, has spent the last 8 years more on social investment program, and it's all on record. So,
yes.
And this looks like it's going to be a handover to the next administration because the new administration will have to manage or handle these palliatives, because that's what the finance minister said, that there's a conversation going on with the transition committee on how this $800 million will handle. I guess it's just secured and we'll hand it over to them. If there are other things that will have to be done from June the 1st, will have to be done. So that looks like our record of social impact programming or palliatives over the last 8 years is going to extend into the new administration. So I'm just going to ask, why is it therefore that we've done so much and have spent so much in social investment program, which is SIPs, and we still have one of the highest level of unemployment, poverty, low per capita income, even in sub-Saharan Africa?
You know what we're doing in Nigeria, Boston, is that you have malaria and typhoid, and you go and meet a doctor, and the doctor will give you paracetamol. What will happen to your temperature? It will come down. Maybe you might feel better, maybe after praying intensively. But after 2 days or 3 days...
Well, the doctor will not recommend prayer, by the way.
Yes, but maybe you might add it, yes.
Okay,
so
in this part of the world.
In this part of the world. So you find out that it might subsidize. But after some time, the thing will start going up again. So what I'm trying to say is that even though the current administration has invested so much in social impact programs, it hasn't worked because we haven't done the fundamental things right. So we haven't run proper diagnosis of the problem we have in Nigeria. It's not about just throwing money. Is
it that we don't have the proper diagnosis, or we haven't really done the right thing?
It's a combination of the two. So for you to do the right thing, you must do proper diagnosis. And now it's okay. What should I be doing to address this issue?
So there's an issue with the doctor.
There's an issue with the doctor. That is the diagnosis of the problem.
Yes.
And then, because it's a wrong diagnosis, it's now giving a wrong prescription, or maybe a quasi, maybe some of the prescription might be okay, but it might not really solve the problem entirely. So what we are supposed to do is to sit back and say, what are the things that we're supposed to do properly? Interestingly, PMB government is ending by May 29th. So it is important that the incoming government, we sit back and say, what are the faults, or what are the failures of this last government? Remember, from 2001 or 2000 to about 2014, the economy was growing averagely at about 6%. So the question then is, what happened that from 2015 to now, we've been maybe about 1% or something like that? We know that
on average.
On average. We know that there was COVID, there are other global issues, but remember also that even with this COVID that is a global issue, there are other countries that have grown beyond.
Even in Africa.
In Africa.
Yes.
So what it tells you that there are certain things that we are not getting right. That we must rethink some of these things we are doing, and now truthfully and through accountable, serious, committed leadership, start addressing some of these issues to make Nigeria a better place. Because at the end of the day, it's about Nigeria. And it is also important that the government, most of the time when you listen to some government officials, they present some of the issues that they're trying to make as if say, we and you, we and them. This is about Nigeria. It's about inclusive government, accountable government, to make the place a better place. Because there's poverty in your village. It's also in my village, is in Sokoto, is in Maiduguri.
That's why I said every Nigerian is technically poor in the manner of speaking.
Exactly.
Because even if you have a good car, you're driving on a bad road.
Exactly.
So you're technically poor because you don't have good roads.
Exactly.
You have good hospitals as a first place to go. There's no basic education that is worth the name. Technically, with all the money some of us may have in our accounts, we're poor.
Of course we are poor, because at the end of the day, you might wake up tomorrow morning and they say dollar is now 800 naira. And maybe, of course, we live in a global village. And as we live in a global village, what happens externally, directly or indirectly, affects what you have. So let me just give you an example of what happened. I have a relation that was looking for a job. And we kept praying that she should get a job. And she got a job. And she was placed on level 10 in a state. And when they paid her the first salary, I was expecting that she would call me and say, bros, this is my first salary, we've received it, how do you want anything now? But I didn't hear from her till after 2 months. I now called her and said, what happened? She said, bros, they didn't explain this thing very well for her. Her salary is about 70,000 naira in a state, level 10. So what will 70,000 naira do for a family of 4 or 5, as the case may be? So as we are talking about the federal government, we're also supposed to be talking about the state governors, who, to a large extent, has failed in providing good leadership, responsible leadership, and impactful leadership across the states. That's why you find out that the poverty we're talking about in states.
We've got a whole lot to talk about, and again, May 29 is just around the corner, so we just have a lot to talk about as we begin to see more clarity down the line. Thank you so much for coming here. It's a holiday evening. Thank you so much for sharing your time. You still have time to grab dinner tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy sharing your thoughts with us and your perspectives on this national issue.